Yeah, we're sitting at 25 participants, so that feels right.
How many?
Okay, well, I'm going to jump into it now. Welcome everyone for joining our presentation for the Carbon Capture Farm project. On behalf of the team, I want to say thank you for the gift of your time for joining us this evening over Zoom. I'll get into the agenda in just a moment, but first I'm going to introduce myself and the other presenters. So my name is Andrea Kwok. I am one of the co-project managers for the Carbon Capture Farm project with a background in environmental education. I'm joined by my other co-project manager, Josh Meltzer. He's going to be hopping on to help with the Q&A portion at the end of the presentation, as well as Kristen Castro-Lynch. She is our senior waste diversion engineer with 35 years of experience. Kristen is responsible for operating the Red Deer waste management site for 15 years, as well as implementing the organic cart programs in Beaumont, Leduc, Spruce Grove, Stony Plains, Devon, Strathcona County, and many other counties in Alberta. We are also joined by Marco Castro-Lynch, our operations manager, who also brings 35 years of experience, as well as Marshall Hundert, our urban planner, who comes with more than 40 years of experience. Behind the scenes, we have a team of 6 expert project consultants, everything from civil engineering to environmental engineering to geotechnical surveying and more. So that is to say, we are excited to share our experience and our knowledge of leading technologies and our hopes for the Carbon Capture Farm project today. So I'll move into the outline. Our goal for the presentation is to be informative, but also concise to save ample time for the Q&A section, which will come at the end of the presentation. So we will be speaking for about 20 minutes, followed by 40 minutes of Q&A with a conclusion time of 8 o'clock. So firstly, Kirsten will share the Carbon Capture Farm vision. Marshall will discuss the project details. Marco is going to walk us through a typical day at the site and the processes, and then we'll hear again from Kirsten about the benefits, the impacts, and mitigation. Before we begin, I want to make you aware that we are responsible for recording this presentation. As much as we like to see your faces, if you're more comfortable, you may disable your video in the Q&A portion. There's an option at the bottom of the Zoom screen. The recording will be used to help us prepare an executive summary for the county. You may also use the chat function at the bottom of Zoom if you prefer to type out your questions. And I'd also like you to know that this presentation, this PowerPoint, will be sent out to you all afterwards, so don't stress out about taking notes very quickly. Okay, this What We've Heard Thus Far slide is essentially a summary of topics related to the Carbon Capture Farm project that we have heard from the community so far, whether that's through our admin@carboncapturefarm.ca email address or phone calls or door-to-door visits. So we're going to address everything from traffic impacts to protecting Weed Creek and how soil is made throughout the presentation. We also have the opportunity to ask questions related to the topics on the slide or others that you think of in the Q&A portion. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Kirsten.
Hi everybody, we're super excited about this farming and recycling project, which really captures carbon in 2 ways. It reduces waste organics and it makes things grow. It's actually a double whammy carbon reduction technology. We have been searching for this site for probably 10 years and 2 years very aggressively, and we're so excited we found it, particularly because it has the 110 acres of trees around the site, which Marshall will tell you more about. And just on a off note, we searched everywhere, and it turns out our family cabin is actually at Argentia Beach, just 20 kilometers up the road. So I know I'm a newbie, we've only been out there for 30 years, but we do know and love this area.
Yeah, okay.
Now I'll turn you over to Marshall. Hi, Marshall, are you there?
You're on mute.
Does Marshall need to be unmuted?
Unmuted, yeah.
Fuck's sakes. That happens like every
Josh,
day.
I've tried clicking it if you got any.
Marshall, are you unmuted? You have a mute sign on your screen in the bottom left-hand corner. There, I think you're good to go, Marshall.
Can you hear me?
Okay, take it away. Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry for that. There's the first technological glitch of the evening. Hopefully the last. Sorry about that, everyone.
It's crazy what we're doing in the world today, but
It
take
is.
it away.
Okay, thanks. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Marshall Hundert. I've been involved in urban planning in the Capital Region for a little over 40 years. During that time, I've also performed some site selections for this specific type of facility in southwestern Ontario. I'm going to give you an overall perspective of the property and some of the locational context. I believe up on the screen now you'll see an aerial photograph. Firstly, this property is zoned agricultural, like most of the land surrounding us. Under this zoning, our proposed use is considered discretionary, which means the Duke County would like to hear your comments prior to making their decision, and that is precisely why we're meeting with you and your neighbors today. This property, a full quarter section, is 3.5 kilometers from the intersection of Highway 39 and Range Road 281. The haul route is shown in the aerial photograph in blue. Our site is positioned between the Thorsby sewage lagoons. You can see those outlined on purple. Those are just on our southern boundary. And the waste transfer station, also shown in purple, which is right at our northeast corner of the site. There are a number of livestock operations in the surrounding area and along the proposed haul route. We've identified just a few of these operations closest to our site with a red dot on the aerial photograph. The prevailing winds in this area almost always blow from the west. It is very rare for wind to blow towards the south or the southwest. On the next slide, we've zoomed in a little bit closer to our site, and it identifies the parts that make up our comprehensive farm operation. As you can see, the property is heavily treed, 110 acres in total out of the quarter section. None of these trees will be disturbed by this proposed development. The soil processing piece of the farm sits within 8.5 acres. That's only 5% of the quarter section's total land area. And you can see that it is located in the center of the quarter section. We've done this so that we can provide the greatest setbacks from the property edges. The least of these setbacks is 265 feet, and we are well over 1,100 feet to the closest farmstead to the east. The soil operation will not be visible from surrounding roads nor any of our neighboring properties. As mentioned, we aren't touching existing forest, and the other sides of the site will have landscaped earth berms. These berms will be 6 feet high and planted with trees, completely blocking all views of the operation. That's it for my part of this presentation. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to answering all of your questions later in the presentation. I'm now going to turn this over to my colleague, Marco.
Hello, everyone. I am Marco, the operations manager. Many of you work the land, and most are familiar with composting. We wanted to share with you a bit more detail on the day-to-day operations at the facility and how the common farm composting process is done. The organic material we receive, the feedstock, arrives from communities such as Spruce Grove, Devon, Fort Saskatchewan, and the like. And we hope to soon receive material from Thorsby and Leduc, the organic material. We do not receive any organics from residents of Edmonton. We do, however, receive feedstock from food manufacturers such as Chimo. This feedstock is either sourced separate organics, the stuff that we separate at home, we're trying to be good stewards of the environment, landscape material, or from food production. It is delivered to us with trucks that will average approximately 2 a day in the winter seasons and about 15 per day during the summer and spring. At the end of the process, we generate grade A compost. This is then used by landscapers, local farmers, and community garden groups for their own purposes. Basically, you can see now that the layout of what the operation will be. The material is first scaled in, then it is delivered on the left there to the receiving area. It is then promptly assessed by the operator and placed onto the aerated pipes for initial composting. The pile is then covered by a biofilter. In due time, it gets turned into the curing and maturing sections. This can take a few months. And when it is ready, it is then screened and sent out to the end users. On the next slide, you can see the typical truck that will be going down the roads. Those will be the primary, and sometimes they consolidate those trucks into a larger one that brings maybe like 4 times the capacity, but it also has better displacement. At the bottom of that, on the left side, that is roughly the system for aerated piles that we use. We use grain blowers to force air into the piles to aid on the composting process. On the top right is a typical excavator that we'll have working at the site, one or two of those. And we use that to turn the piles, to form the piles, and to bring them onto the screening section at the end, as you see at the bottom right. That's a typical trommel screener that we use at the operation to separate the overs and the fines being the material that goes to the end users. Now I'll put you back to Kirsten.
Yeah, we strongly believe that this project should benefit the community. Get any bigger than what we're talking about today. If we do want to expand, we will move to another site. And this project creates local waste diversion expertise, which already in the past has benefited Devon, Beaumont, and Leduc. We hope in the future, we've heard residents of Thorsby are interested in a source segregated organics program, and hopefully we'll be able to aid with this through this project. Some other things that we've done in the past are fundraisers, and we actually raise $50,000 every year for groups such as the Boy Scouts and the 4-H clubs, and we'd like to extend this in this area. Also, we've got a pilot project running where we have grown barley on composted farmland, which we want to do here, and we're hoping that will lead to maybe a malting project or even a craft brewery in the local area. Speaking to the environmental benefits, this project will direct 20,000 tons of organic waste into soil as nutrients and will eliminate 26,000 tons of carbon or greenhouse gases every year, which will then be used also to grow plants under carbon sequestration. This is equivalent to eliminating 5,600 cars off the road each year. The compost that we produce is directed towards farming clientele and helps us with creating Alberta's low carbon future. And we want to make sure that everything remains safe by operating to and beyond Alberta environment standards. So I know many of you are farmers and understand the benefits to soil, but just in short, compost reduces the use of chemicals in your farming. It increases the water holding capacity and adds healthy microbes by the billions that fight off diseases. Also, micronutrients are added, and of course, the very important, it helps reduce compaction. So those roots can take hold and give you stronger, healthier plants. And last but not least, this project has really good economic benefits to the area, adds to the tax base, and we'll be investing several million into this project, which will allow for contracts for equipment and trucking locally, hopefully, as well as hiring some part-time workers. And through our annual repair and maintenance budget, we will be preferring local businesses for that work. This project really creates local organic processing infrastructure, which right now in Alberta is in critical shortage. Now I want to address some of the impacts of this project and how those will be mitigated. We've divided it into traffic, air, and water. With traffic, along the haul route, there'll be dust, and we will be looking at the dust suppression. A bond will be paid to the county for potential road damage, and we'll work with the county to ensure the haul road is maintained and graded. The road bans of 75% we've worked with at our other projects and is normal to us, but I want you to know we are sensitive to road issues as we all need them. Air is a really important topic, but I want to say, really, our team has been through the school of hard knocks. Over the last 30 years, we've gained a ton of experience, and now in opening this site, we're going to apply everything. And the number one key thing is aeration, aeration, aeration. We'll be putting in a forced aeration system. Biofilters will be used to filter out any kind of odorous material that comes up from the piles. And then also we will be using human patrollers for security at the site And as well, humans can smell 2,000 constituents versus equipment that can only smell 20. We believe prevention of odor is really essential to this project's success. Now, speaking to the groundwater, because Weed Creek is in that area, which on our forested area we really love. So what we'll be doing is on-site water is recirculated back in the process, and the grade is built to direct it to our clay line pond. As well, containment berms will be used to make sure that that happens. The whole 8-acre soil processing facility will be underlined by a 2-foot clay compacted liner to make sure that nothing leaves the site. I just wanted to address a few other impacts which have been brought up by several of you. Birds, they come in the spring and fall when they migrate, and we use bird noisemaker that tunes into different birds of prey, which works quite well. And the active area of the site will be fenced to keep larger wildlife out. In terms of rodents and vermin, because of the turning and heat, they really have not been an issue at other sites, and Alberta is rat-free. So I just wanted to do a little comparison of the evolution of the technology. When I started in 1996, we had limited industry knowledge. Now we have an expert team on the most advanced techniques for composting. We liaise with both the US and Canadian compost councils. When we started at some of our earliest sites, our setbacks, and currently today, are only 1 meter away. Here on this site, we would own the setbacks and have at least 265 feet in all directions. As well, the site is surrounded on 3 sides by the forest with the trees, and along the highway there will be a 2-meter vegetated berm, so the site will not be visible. And further, we'll be on an 8-acre site, whereas on past projects we've done that same amount of material on 4 acres. So the pile profile will come down tremendously so as not to catch any winds. And then being in that bermed area will be extremely effective. Also, due to processing efficiency, there will be much less material on this site because material moves through quicker. In summary, I want to say we have a sincere desire to listen and to be a member of your community. This project can be a success for your community. There are other projects similar to this that you can look to see what their results have been. For instance, Walker's projects in St. Catharines and St. Jacobs, or the Abbotsford project, the Net Zero Waste, which have had excellent results and fit very well into their communities. Now I'm going to turn you over to Marshall for the next steps.
Thanks, Kirsten. Hello again. I'm going to talk a little bit about our approval process and just what's been happening on the site. And although you've been introduced to this project only recently, we've been testing and analyzing the site for the last 9 months. I know some of you wonder why we're doing anything at all on site before we have approvals. I assure you, none of these activities were an attempt to hide anything from you. These are background tests done to make sure that the site can be developed carefully and to ensure protection of the adjacent creek and groundwater. All of these activities are standard practice to provide our engineers with site-specific information so they can properly design the project. And we've now prepared our proposed plans, some of which you've seen on screen tonight, and submitted them to the county for development permit review. We are conducting this public information program that you're participating in tonight, which will continue for about the next 3 weeks. There will be 2 other opportunities to participate in this public information program. This Saturday, March 13th at 11 a.m., and again next Thursday, March 18th at noon. We would like to speak to as many of you and your neighbors as possible. We will summarize all of what we've heard from you and your neighbors and submit this report to Leduc County. The county's approving authority will then consider our application materials together with your comments, and then they'll make their decision to approve or deny our project. Our next step will be preparation and submission to Alberta Environment and Parks for license to operate the facility. All of these approvals from both the county and the province will take another 4 to 6 months to complete. With these approvals in place, we could begin on-site development in the spring of 2022. By that time, we'll have spent close to 20 months before any activity has taken place on the property. Andrea is going to describe our question and answer session, and then it will be your turn to speak to us. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Marshall. Before we begin the Q&A portion, I'm just going to share our pretty simple expectations for positive engagement. We ask that you be respectful as well as relevant. So please keep your questions thoughtful and to the point to give everyone an opportunity to be heard. We'll go around for first-time question askers and then double back if we have time. So just to reiterate, if you'd like to ask a question verbally, raise your hand in the reactions tab at the bottom of the screen, and then you'll be unmuted, you'll have your chance to speak. If you're on a phone, this would be in the ellipses, the ... more buttons tab. And those of you who prefer to pose written questions can do so in the chat. It's also at the bottom of the screen. Josh will read your questions out loud and then we'll answer them. If after all that you still have more questions, please call the number that is posted on this slide. It was also in the mail out information package, which many of you received, but we'll leave it up there for just a minute in case you want to jot it down, and we'd be happy to answer questions by telephone as well. Okay, so I see we have a couple of raised hands coming in. So before I unmute,
The chance of the neighbors even noticing that this project is here, given the completely different structure of the site and the technology used here, is very, very low. You know, it's too bad we can't go back and design that Edmonton site completely different. But I guess, you know, that's what happens over 30 years. You learn and you do better. And I think that's exactly who you want to develop this site, somebody who actually has that experience. I think the experience here is absolutely critical from working with these kinds of projects. And I just want to say in Red Deer, we operated the Red Deer site for 15 years, and we had one complaint in all of that time because the physical layout there was different.
thank you, Kristen. I'm just going to hop on to apologize for internet connection problems, but I also want to give a just over 5-minute time warning. So we've got a couple more hands raised and I'm going to get to those questions, but yeah, Josh?
Yeah, I was going to say, I've got Rob coming up next there. Andrea, if that's okay, I'll unmute him and he can ask his question.
For sure, yeah. I just wanted us to very quickly have an opportunity to say thank you so much for joining us, because we want to get in as many questions. We might not have a formal conclusion, but just a reminder that there are 2 other Zoom presentations coming up this Saturday and this Thursday. But thank you so much for your great input. We are learning a lot.
Thursday.
And yes, let us hear more from Rob. I'm going to unmute you.
Yeah, thank you. Just back to the odor management plan, and I know Marco discussed the aerobic and anaerobic states. So aeration alone doesn't necessarily guarantee that we're not going to end up in a spot where we're anaerobic. And I'm still looking for details on what our odor management is going to be like when we get into an anaerobic state. How do we start our piles and how do we ensure they stay there?
Okay.
So again, I just want to go back to the forming of the piles. A factor is aeration. Basically, if you ensure that a pile has sufficient oxygen, and it's not just blowing air, but it's also the porosity, the mix of the material, you are pretty much guaranteed to have and to not come across anaerobic conditions. If there is something that comes in the situation where perhaps there is a pile that, for whatever reason, without having to think of any, for whatever reason, it has a slight odor. What we do at the moment, and we had actually worked for many years in our existing sites with our neighbors, the nearby neighbors at the industrial park, they will let us know. And within an hour or so, we would take action. And you will only notice that when a pile is being disturbed. So if a pile is formed and covered with a biofilter, you're highly unlikely to have any odor. It is when you move a pile that you open it up and you may release any anaerobic conditions that might have been created. At that point, you find out. So if that was to happen, then the neighbors would give us a call, and then we would basically work with wind direction and other techniques to try to mitigate that odor. In this situation of this farm here, because the piles will be lower to the ground, because they will be much more spread on the area around, there will be much more surface exposed to the environment to receive that aeration. The likelihood it's extremely low that we'll have a problem with that.
Yeah, when we've looked at other sites that have the conditions we have at this site and the way we've designed it, the chance of that odor is extremely low. It would be really nice if we could redesign that Edmonton site to have more acres, but that simply is the one thing that's not possible there.
I've got, one more question. Well, we'll see. But yeah, I've got one more here. Essentially, if the enforcement order is not removed from the current Cleanit Greenit site, will we still be financing this project, the carbon capture farm project?
That order has been in place since 2011. I mean, I can't predict what tomorrow will bring. I'd be really rich if I could do that. But I can't. So, but I can say just based on the past, we have worked with the agencies. We do everything possible to improve things. So, I mean, we're just working forward for the best future for organics diversion and for having a low carbon future in Alberta and doing the right thing for the environment. Somebody's got to look at it. We have to move forward on organics processing. It's critically needed in Alberta, and when we talk to residents in Alberta, most residents want to separate their organics in their household. They understand that throwing those nutrients away into the landfill and not getting them back on the farm where they belong, and that's why this is a recycling and farming project here. Closing that loop is just utterly important. It really has to happen, and it is happening, and it's a great opportunity for the community that does these projects.
Thank you, Kirsten. And on that note, we are hitting our time limit, so I'm just going to invite the fellow presenters to say a final thank you, goodbye, and where they can see you next, perhaps, in the next session.
Okay.
One thing to remember is that we are reachable by the phone number. If you have any questions, you can call us anytime. If you run out of time here, give us a call.
Yeah, and so in summary, we just want to thank everybody for what we've heard tonight. It's very useful and will help us with a plan if this project does go forward. And we want to thank everybody for coming and for the things that we've heard. Some of them we've heard before from neighbors, and some of them are new to us, and we'll be recording all this information and thoughtfully considering it in the design of the project. And we hope we get to meet you again in the future. We love this site. The trees on the site are spectacular. Weed Creek it's wonderful back there. I've hiked through there.
And one last comment also, and Rob, you mentioned mitigation, and in general, I mean, we try our best. We have looked at the best technologies. We have one of the best soil scientists and composters in Western Canada working with us, our consultant. And yet, if there is any other ideas that someone has that perhaps we have not mentioned that could improve our performance as your neighbor, please let us know. There's always something new.
Well, have a really good evening, everybody. Again, thank you for your time. Adios.
See you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Well,